As any die-hard Star Trek fan will tell you, for years our next guest has reminded us that space is the final frontier. He brought interest in science fiction to a level where viewers could reveal their addiction without embarrassment. I don't know about you, but I was definitely a Trekkie. Please welcome writer-producer Gene Roddenberry.
Hi.
I think you've got a fan club here.
Great.
Thank you for coming. Okay. You know, it is amazing that in 3 seasons on NBC, Star Trek started something that really influenced the psyche of a whole generation. Why do you think that was so?
I think because we were one of the first shows that came along that said, hey, there is a tomorrow. And not only that, but we've just begun to invent things. We've just begun to explore. We're a young race. We're just getting started. And I think everyone of a young mind has got to believe that.
And you also had wonderful characters, very, very solid characters. Was this your own writing in this? Or?
Yes, it was principally at the beginning. I think far too much science fiction centers solely on technological things, whereas science fiction is a much broader field. Science fiction has to do with what will we be like, what will we be thinking, what are the economics, the sociology, and all of that. To really find best science fiction, like, and you can make such great comments, like 1980, 84. You can find no better way to warn against the perils of big government than what Orwell did for us then, and Brave New World and things like that. Wow, science fiction is just a really philosophy in motion.
Now, you also had a lot of emotional messages there in Star Trek. A lot of, as you say, it was the emotion there, the real people part of it, the human part of it, and the not-so-human part of it that gave it that.
I saw an opportunity to use these series, really use it to say things that I believe, like to be different is not necessary to be ugly and stuff like that, you know, and that was fun.
The odd thing, though, is that you mentioned that you don't want science fiction just to be based on just science, but you have a delicate balance of this humanity and the emotion, and you had the science enough to tickle those hardcore science buffs. How did you do that? What kind of people did you have working on them?
Well, you know, first of all, we had some fine actors. You know, people say to me, you created Mr. Spock. Well, only some beginnings of that is true. I did an outline, a skeleton, but then you have a fine actor like Leonard Nimoy come on, and he puts the flesh and bones and mannerisms, same with Bill Shatner and all of them. I believed, and fortunately they all believe the same thing, that drama is basically about people. It's how technology affects people that is the really exciting story.
Now, it took, what, I guess it was over 10 years before you came around to coming out with a movie that was, as you say, it was demanded. I mean, the public really wanted this movie. Why did it take so long for that to build?
The studio never believed that the Trekkies were out there. Yeah, I used to say, look, I think we got several million, you know, that'll buy tickets. And they kept saying, oh, come on, Gene, you know, what do you know about those things? It probably looked like a lot to you. Star Wars really had to come along before they, and then they moved too fast, and I think although I'm proud of the movie, I think we got good people in it. I think in the end, they put too much emphasis there on technology and special effects, and took the time away from the people's stories to get it. I think most science fiction today is I think the tail is wagging the dog. Special effects is beginning to wag the movies, and it should not.
Yeah, I think the Star Trek. There's a book on Star Trek. And it's a fascinating book telling about the making of the movie that you co-wrote.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's a very, very interesting book. Well, I want to get some of you Trek fans, give you a time to ask some questions here. Yeah.
What is Mr. Spock's, what is his family name? Like, what's his other name? I heard, like, he has another name. Like, his mother said, like, but you couldn't pronounce it.
Human tongue cannot pronounce it.
I figured you'd say that.
Yeah, you knew it.
Excellent.
Okay, I've been a science fiction fan for many years and a dedicated Trekkie like a lot of people. And first of all, before my question, I'd just like to thank you for coming up with Star Trek and making video something to be proud of.
Very kind.
Thank you, folks, for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, I know. And I have two questions, really. First question is, now we know that video and television has become an idiot medium, and it was like that in the 60s. And I'd like to know, when you came out with Star Trek and you produced it to the networks, how could you convince them that it was worthwhile? It was a brainy show, it had feelings. How did you convince the people at the networks that something that had feelings and brains would sell?
Well, first of all, I lied to them. I told them that those were the days of the Westerns, and I said, look, it's just going to be like wagon train to space, and they'll ride rockets, you know, instead of horses. But look, Charlie, it's really going to be, you know, they'll have zap guns and drawdowns. But I really, in the back of my mind, you know, I was going to be like a communist, an infiltrator, and get these things in.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've heard rumors of another series, and if that is true, how are you going to stop skeptics from saying, oh, it will never be as good as the first one? Can you do it? The actors are too old. Will it become like another motion picture, like the critics not raving about it at all and having troubles with, like you said, special effects taking over the show? How will you be able to?
Well, they're going to do a new one. It'll probably be shot on a high-budget TV movie. Then if it has the ability to do it, they'll put it in the theaters or they'll keep it on TV. I'm not going to do it. They will not give me the creative controls I had on the early shows, and so I've said, you know, maybe somebody else should do it, and I have no objection to someone coming along and really making, you know, finding the new actors and slow replacements and so on, and I hope they do a good job, and I will be backing them with technical advice as long as they'll listen to me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you feel about the gross, or at least what I consider very gross, commercialism that's done on Star Trek, say, over the past 10 years with all the conventions and people selling, like, materials that were 50 cents worth for, like, $5 by making it into a tribble or something like that?
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
For years, we really tried to find some way to control the thing, but for Paramount to do it, since Paramount really owns the basic copyright. But there just seemed to be none. I think it's like in a lot of things in life, you've got to be a little philosophical. When you arouse that excitement, there's always going to be the barracuda that come in and feed too. And I wish it weren't so, and we try to eliminate it where we can.
What was it that inspired you to start writing Star Trek?
Well, I had seen science fiction. I thought that they didn't have enough people in the stories. And also, I wanted to make some comments. And in television those days, and maybe it's the same today, you couldn't talk about sex, unions, politics, anything of any meaning. So I thought, well, hey, if I have it happen to little polka-dotted people way out there, maybe I can get it past the censors. And I did. Every 14-year-old knew what I was talking about, but got right over the censors' heads. You know?
Yeah, I think that you did. You definitely used that so well to get across those statements, and really appreciate it. I think from everybody here, thank you very much for coming to the show.